Hi, Michael King here again from the Cosmosis Mentoring Centre. Today I would like to share a little about the alchemical transformation process that we facilitate here at the Cosmosis Mentoring Centre as it relates to the soul and the process of initiation. Now, for the most part, sadly, in the world we live in today, for the most part, many who actually believe themselves to be on the path of enlightenment are merely caught up in the glamour of the New Age movement, wherein a kind of superficial recreational spirituality, more akin to the culture of recreational drug users than true spirituality, is rampant. It may sound quite harsh to quite a lot of you, but sadly this is the case. Most of these people think that initiation is all about some kind of ritual or ceremony, and such a belief is simply an error. Initiation is more of an eternal process which is built upon life after life after life. It's not about static goals and rituals which give you some kind of free pass. There's no such thing as an easy 3-weekend workshop path to enlightenment. It takes discipline, hard work and patience. The earthly teachings around the process of spiritual initiation, as disseminated by most of the world's religions, is at best rudimentary. Now, basically that's because those teachings are not operating out of an inner illumination, but rather regurgitating an old tradition, which is degenerated in much the same way as a photocopy fades as you continue to make copies of the copies of the copies of the copies. I remember in the 1960s when Reiki first started to be disseminated in the West. Back then I remember to become a Reiki master you had to actually do an apprenticeship with a master, a Reiki master, which involved literally living and working with that master for 5 years. And I know a few people who did this training, and the ones who did this training back in the day, they're amazing healers. Now you just have to do a few weekend workshops and pay you $10,000 and you get a piece of paper that says you are a Reiki master. I have to wonder if the new process for becoming a Reiki master produces the same standard of mastery as the original process, and just somehow I highly doubt it. Anyway, I drifted off topic there a little. Now, the alchemical transformation process, which has come to be known as the initiation process or the ascension process, begins in any life with an alignment, an agreement, if you will, between the soul and its body-mind, its vehicle. And both the soul and the body-mind must agree to embark upon the journey, and the tension involved during this agreement phase coming into being is known as divine discontent. Many of you may be feeling this in these moments. The soul prepares itself for spiritual transformation by consciously choosing to implement the truth which it perceives through the mechanism of meditation in a way that calms and subdues the lower animal nature to that indwelling will, which is known by many names, including the Christ child, the God within, and the divine spark, to name but a few. The process that we use here at the Cosmosis Mentoring Centre to prepare people to embark upon their transformational journey is based upon systematically rebuilding your self-worth foundation on love rather than fear. Very briefly, there are 4 aspects to this process, namely self-worth, a sense of uniqueness, a sense of belonging, and self-determination, which is all about taking responsibility for every aspect of your life. There's no room on this path for being a victim, having victim consciousness. So all of our mentors are fully qualified, and many of them are actually multimodality accredited practitioners. Your Cosmosis mentor will guide you step by step through this process of laying a new strong foundation for personal spiritual growth. Now, only through disciplined meditation can one awaken the indwelling seed of mastery within the soul. In fact, your life must become a waking meditation of sorts. So herein we have the birth of a new internal dynamic. This is vitally important. The soul must choose to discipline its vehicle, and the human vehicle must choose to meditate upon the light within. In so doing, a dynamic is initiated which leads ultimately to the fusion of the soul and its physical, emotional, mental vehicle of expression, the body-mind. Concurrent to this process, one must learn to control emotional disturbance within the human vehicle. In practical terms, this means learning to control carnal passion, anger and fear. Not by repression, but by the transmutation of these emotions into their higher, purified expressions. Nothing is more damaging to the soul and its human vehicle than violent emotion. One of the keys to mastering emotion is to love the truth, or in other words, to end the processes of denial and avoidance. And your Cosmosis mentor will help you to come to an understanding of how you implement this in your life. The other alchemical key to this level of preparation is to transcend judgment. Not completely, but you need to begin to transcend judgment. Together these disciplines are the foundation of the transformational process into mastery. In truth, these disciplines are merely the preparation phase for embarking upon the initiation process itself, the transformation process itself. Once one has achieved some measure of success within the preparation phase, one then begins the alchemical elemental integrations. This is a whole new phase. Now, these preliminary internal transformations themselves even are not really initiations yet, but they are often referred to as the elemental initiations. What they actually involve is the attunement of the various internal elemental structures or energies of the body-mind to the frequencies of that your particular individual soul fragment. In essence, it sets up a sympathetic resonance between the soul and its vehicle, so as to ultimately allow the fusion of the soul and its body-mind into one unit. Only when this fusion takes place is one able to truly begin the process of anchoring an ascended consciousness. And this is ultimately the goal of the transformational process, to anchor an ascended consciousness. Now, the first of the alchemical initiations on the elemental level is the water initiation, and it occurs when one is no longer controlled by anger, fear or passion. Now, given that most members of the New Age movement seem to act as though sexual attraction is the most powerful force in the universe, that shows that most in the New Age movement have not even passed through this very early portal in the initiation process. On the ground, you will experience many opportunities to demonstrate that these lower emotions of fear, anger and passion no longer hold sway over you. And only by demonstrating proficiency in holding and following a higher ideal in the face of the temptation of fear, anger and passion is one then able to pass on to the next level. By now, you will no longer make hasty judgments, no longer do stupid things in anger, and no longer be a victim of sexual urges or anxiety. I will add here that human sexuality is a wonderful expression. However, to become spiritualized, it must be about communicating love and not about satisfying any kind of lower urge or lower appetite. The second elemental initiation is the air initiation, and this relates to mental mastery. The mind is a wonderful servant, yet it's a terrible master. So you must ultimately learn to discipline the mind and use it as a tool. The thinking or constructive mind has only existed as long as this body has been alive. Yet most people these days treat it as though it is their guru, like it's some kind of all-knowing, all-wise oracle. The lower mind only knows what it has experienced in this lifetime. All it can do is compare what it is experiencing now with what else it has experienced over some number of short years or decades. The lower mind must become the servant of the indwelling soul, and it must be made receptive to inspiration, intuition, and understanding from the higher or spiritual mind. Now, the higher mind lives on from life to life as you voyage through eternity, and it is both the repository and the receptacle of all the wisdom you have personally accumulated during that eternal journey, moving in and out of incarnation from form to form, life to life. When I say that you have accumulated this, I don't mean the bit of you that you call me. The me bit of you is just a temporal manifestation. The body-mind creature thing that you are indwelling is just a vehicle. It is not you. You are the intelligence which is indwelling that vehicle. You are not actually even the indwelling soul, in truth, as the soul is just a mechanism that the eternal you uses to be able to manifest a vehicle so as to be able to explore the realms of matter. You'll come to an understanding of that later on. Now, for those of you who still buy into this ridiculous one life then heaven or hell nonsense, then you need to do some homework. It's an historical fact that Jesus taught reincarnation, as did the early Christian church. The Council of Nicaea, about 1500 years ago, came up with the heaven-hell thing for two reasons. They actually changed the doctrine. One reason was that it was just a good marketing strategy to bring the teaching more into line with certain pagan religions from which they were trying to convert followers. And the other reason was to try to scare people into being holy. Well, it sounds a little crazy, but at the time, many people, because they knew about reincarnation, they would not attempt to improve themselves because they figured they would just worry about the consequences in their next life. Now, this is a matter of historical fact, and if you do some study, you'll find out that this is the case. Now, you will work on the air initiation along with the water initiation concurrently. However, you cannot pass through the portal of the second transformation, the air initiation, until you have passed through the first, and so on. In alchemical terms, to pass the air initiation, you must learn to use your mind like a mirror. And this is important to understand. So your mind accepts everything without bias. It refuses nothing. It does not judge. It reflects, yet it does not retain. Now imagine for a moment a mirror that tried to retain every image that it has ever reflected. What a mess that would be. Imagine looking into a mirror and you saw your reflection mixed in with every other image that that mirror had ever reflected. Now you may laugh, but most of you use your mind in just that way. A mirror does not accept some reflections and not others. It judges no reflection and it retains no reflection. This is how you must learn to use your mind. You must learn to use your lower mind like a mirror. The lower mind processes instincts, habits and thoughts. The higher mind processes concepts, ideas and illuminated understanding. This is an important distinction. You must come to an understanding of how your mind works and how to use it in a constructive way. The lower mind must learn to reflect both the world of matter and the higher mind in equal measure. Only then have you integrated the air initiation. A new logic, which is the illuminated reflection of the spiritualized mind, now presides over the human expression. An important aspect of this level is releasing the idea of right and wrong and embracing that life is all simply about choices and consequences. The next level is the fire initiation. This is the birth of the unconditional love nature and spiritual beauty nature in the life of the initiate. The most important key to this elemental integration is the holy encounter. God in me greets God in you. The second key to this initiation is mastering spiritual boundaries. Being on the spiritual path does not mean being a doormat for someone to wipe their feet on in the name of love and non-judgment. Nor is it about being aloof and rising above the world in self-righteousness. So there's a balance, a delicate balance to spiritual boundaries, which is way beyond this short sharing. Our mentors are very skilled in helping you to master these fine balances, and that's an important part of your training with the Cosmosis Mentoring Centre. There's an old alchemical adage which states that unconditional love is loving the self yet being selfless. Much easier said than done. Suffice to say that when you master this element, love then illuminates your heart and your mind, and you actually begin to radiate spiritual light. Okay, what is spiritual light? A lot of people talk about, but what is it? Spiritual light is the energy which is emitted when you fuse spirit and matter. When you fuse spirit into matter, an alchemical reaction occurs which causes spiritual light to be radiated. This level involves a profound reorientation of consciousness, which might best be described as your life motive and life purpose becoming living in, of and for love in service to all that is. Remembering, of course, that you too are part of all that is. Now, this service ethic triggers the early stages of spiritual illumination, and one progresses by consciously aligning one's will to bring all you know into agreement with all that is. That's an important part of this phase of the training. All that is the accumulated wisdom and understanding which the evolutionary forces of this universe have acquired from all of the experience of this creation to date. In a very real sense, this knowing is a kind of absolute ideal, which you must simply surrender to. Now, when you think about it, it's pretty arrogant to believe that your little fragment of mind that has existed for just a few decades could know more than the accumulated wisdom of the universal mind which has existed for billions of years. You just need to accept this. Relinquishing the personal myth of mental infallibility is a difficult sacrifice for most people in these times, but well worth it because you are then able to, as a result, experience the alchemical transfiguration by spiritual fire. And this is better known as one's base nature being transmuted into spiritualized matter, the equivalent of lead being transmuted into gold. Now, the last alchemical element initiation is the earth initiation. This is a multifaceted experience which is characterized by several key peak experiences. One of these experiences is the transcendence of the primal fear of death. Another is developing the ability to be able to function consciously independent of the body-mind. The scientist states that everything is energy. The spiritual initiate states that everything is light, simply vibrating at different levels and densities. One of the keys to this level is to know beyond doubt that energy and light are actually the same thing. As you come to this understanding, you then have this transformation initiated which allows soul and the body to come together. Together, these four elemental initiations see the lower will become subordinate to the will of the evolving soul. And the next stage is the soul mechanism melding with its vehicle. And only then does the process known as ascension commence. That's the beginning of that process. There's a lot of misinformation out there about the ascension process. In truth, it would probably be better described as descension. For once the melded soul, body, mind is sufficiently prepared, the eternal spirit, that is the real you, begins its descent to anchor and take up residence upon and within the earth plane. Once this happens, there is no higher and lower self, as they have become one. Contrary to the outrageous claims of so many in these times, this ascension-descension process is actually quite a rare occurrence. Only a few in any generation succeed at the highest degree of melding heaven and earth. The other thing to remember is that just because you succeed in attaining to supporting an ascended consciousness in one life, that doesn't mean that it is permanent. You must maintain the degree of mastery which precipitated the transformation in order to maintain that. Once attained, in order to maintain it, you must not only remain in the various levels of self-mastery which precipitated the transformation in the first place, but you also have to continue to strengthen and refine both your nature and your expression in order to maintain that state of being. So you are ever an ongoing work of progress. This means continually integrating more and more universal and cosmic awareness. Another important thing to remember is that every time you incarnate, you have to go through the process again. There is no free lunch. So just because you've achieved it in one life, there's no recognition of prior learning in the ascension process. So in every life that you embody, you must retrace your steps, demonstrating your proficiency and mastery in the various levels in order to regain the previously held attainment. A lot of people say, oh, I did that in some other life, or I fully mastered that in the summer of 1964, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. That is illusion. So all these ones out there simply claiming greatness because they were some great soul in Egypt or Atlantis are just fools attempting to bask in the glory of other embodiments. They may or may not have been some high-level initiate in another life, but unless you do the work in this life, you get no credit for that. If I personally meet one more self-proclaimed incarnation of Jesus or Mary Magdalene, I think I'll vomit. Avoid these well-intentioned idiots at all costs. Those that are truly advanced in this process do not make outrageous public claims like that. Any real master soul is too busy doing and being the presence that they came here to embody to be bothered telling everyone how they are the one true this or that, or how they are the fully incomplete divine embodiment of God's second cousin twice removed. A real master simply does not behave in that way. No true master soul will ever make public claims about being a master soul. Rather, they allow their presence and their actions to speak for itself and allow the determination of their attainment to be discerned by the response that they evoke in the minds and hearts of those that encounter them. Remember, this process is all about taking life in and turning it into love and wisdom. That's the real measure of this. Anyone who seriously embodies as a way shower on our beloved earth will instinctively embark upon the path of regaining prior attainment at an early age. They will not commence upon the path because their life falls apart, because there's some catastrophe in their life, or because they seek a claim. It will just be a very, very natural process because they understand this process and they've done it time after time, and it comes very naturally. Please forgive my cynicism, but the ethics of most teachers, authors, healers, and self-professed masters that I meet out there is appalling, and certainly testimony to their lack of any real attainment and self-mastery in this lifetime.